and therefore you develop hyperglycemia. This is a acute effect, but if it persists long time, one can develop type 2 diabetes. That is what happens.
So
It is not very good.
So are you saying, Dr. Prasad, that there was a study that showed EMFs have a negative effect on the beta cells of our pancreas,
Yes,
which could actually lead to type 2 diabetes?
that's right.
All right, I'm excited to interview a brilliant scientist, doctor, human being, Dr. Kedar Prasad, and he was on episode 132 of the Keto Camp podcast. It was the first time I interviewed this gentleman, and we talked about how to boost your immune system with micronutrients. It was such a great interview because we talked about the immune system in a way that I've never spoken about before. Dr. Prasad got into the science of the immune system. He explained it in such a fantastic way. You could go listen to that down below. There's a link for that previous episode. Dr. Prasad is the science. He has published 26 books and over 250 peer-reviewed scientific articles. He is the world's first radiation biologist. And I'm excited because we're going to talk about 5G and EMFs and everything you want to learn about it, how to protect yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Dr. Kedar Prasad. Hey, Dr. Prasad.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming back. I really enjoyed the first discussion we had, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion as well. So let's talk about EMFs. You know, for somebody who has no really understanding on what it is, could you just break down what EMFs are?
Yes. EMF is called electromagnetic radiation, and it has a two component. One component is the electricity, another is magnetic field, and there is a difference. You can block totally the penetration of electrical field by building material, by skin, by many things. You can block it. But you cannot block the magnetic field penetration. That's the difference between the electrical field and magnetic field. Electrical field can be blocked by many materials, building materials and other things, but magnetic field cannot be blocked. And therefore, when we talk about electromagnetic penetrations, it will penetrate not only in the skin, but also inside the tissue. Because there has been some controversy on this issue, and I want to clarify that electromagnetic does increase the penetration into your body, and therefore it can cause adverse health effects.
So it could enter our cells?
Yes, so it can affect our cells. And then I will tell later on how it does it.
Okay. So that's a clear explanation of it. Now we're talking about, we have different generations of technology. Now we have 5G. A lot of people are talking about 5G. We see 5G towers. We see commercials with 5G. What's the difference between this new technology, 5G, and previous generations of technology?
Yeah. And first, most of the research that had been done was done on the frequency of previous generations. For example, the previous generations frequency range, that's the way you measure the strength of the electromagnetic radiation, is anywhere from a 1,000 million hertz. Hertz is the unit that you measure the strength, and up to 2,500 million hertz. So these are the range that we have studied, most of them. And some of those studies have shown, for example, increase in the risk of cancer, because when you do a survey type of a study in human, there is a lot of variables. And so so most of the studies that have been done on EMF, previous generation EMF, this had been done on a survey type of a study in human, which has many, many variables, and it is difficult to control. So from that point, it shows that it can induce the risk of cancer. It increases the risk of cancer, especially brain cancer. But some people said, no, that's not true. But for me, if the survey type of a study in human is supported by the animal studies, then I believe the survey type of a study is correct. Otherwise, it is just an association rather than the cause and effect. In other words, nobody can believe if you just have a survey type of a study showing that it causes an increased risk of cancer, because there are too many variables to control. But in this scenario, EMF radiation, that survey type of a studies which show that it increases the risk of brain cancer and possibly other cancer as well. It is supported by the animal study. U.S. National Center for Toxicology has extensive study in animal model, both rat and mice, and exposed to EMF radiations, and found increase in the risk of cancer. And therefore, even though there are some controversy in terms of a survey type of a study, we call it epidemiology study, but since it is supported by the animal study, I personally believe that there is a risk of EMF radiation for increasing the cancer risk. But again, EMF radiation effect also depends upon how close you are. Closer you are, higher the energy absorption in your body. And further away, then you have a reduced risk. How long you use it? You use for 1 year, 10 years, but these things are going to be with us like environment, like a sunlight all over the place. Actually, even better than sunlight, because sunlight doesn't come into the house, sun, but in house, all over the place, we have Wi-Fi, electromagnetic radiation. So it is not going to go away, and it is a powerful tool of communication. 5G, we can't say it is a bad thing. It is a bad thing, but we can take care of whatever the potential health risk is. But they are going to stay because it improves the quality of communication quicker and so on and so forth. And so as far as the cancer is concerned, that's very, very good data. I believe that EMF radiation, if you use extensively too close to the devices, it could increase the risk of cancer, at least in some individual. It can also increase the risk of what is called, some people, not all, some people have hypersensitivity to electromagnetic radiation. And what a hypersensitivity means, the people suddenly, as soon as they enter into the field which are very strong, they start feeling headache, they feel fatigue, they got a cognitive dysfunction, transient one, acutely one, and so it has a lot of neurological issues involved. And that is called hypersensitivity. Nobody has disagreed that this is not the case, but again, there is a lot of data on hypersensitivity that some people suffer. They can have a transient, and if you continue to do for many years, it could have a permanent effect in terms of the damage could be irreversible in terms of fatigueness or anxiety or depressions. But at least for short term, if you get out of the field, then you recover and then you feel okay. So there is a acute effect and the late effect. And so the previous generation that we have, all the study had been done. It can also affect the, for example, motility of the sperms. It can induce diabetic-like syndrome, for example, hyperglycemia, excessive blood sugar that can lead to a type 2 diabetes. And so, again, there is a whole bunch of effects. So nobody can deny that thus far the study has been done on a generation which was previous to fifth generation, and they show definitely that there is an increased risk of health risk in human. Although many officials have said that, well, data is not sufficient, but there is a lot of data, in my opinion, and may not be sufficient to make an official guideline, but even it raises the question of health, and there are some documentation we should be concerned about that, and we cannot physically shield it. So the only thing we can do is how we can shield biologically, and that I will discuss later on.
So there's a lot of money behind the 5G technology, which is why I suspect they're, kind of denying some of these studies. You said they looked at the survey studies, and people could argue that because they're survey studies, but then you correlated that to these animal studies, and that putting those two together help you see a clear picture that this could be an issue with
Right.
creating problems in the body. So can you go ahead?
No, then I was going to say that then here is some distinction that I was reading the document that was presented to the European Parliament by scientists, a group of scientists, and also I saw in the World Health Organization as well as the NIH document about the differences between the fifth generation and the previous generation EMF radiation. Now, fifth generation's technology uses a millimeter wave. Millimeter wave is the very short waves, and it is but previous one have used either microwave or radio wave, but this one uses a millimeter wave. And EMF, and this wave is much more powerful because this is important to use the milliwave because you can transform or carry out large amount of information very quickly. So this technology is very important. Another difference is that the 5 generations uses what is called a pulsed radiation. Pulse means, it is a like pulsation, up and down, frequency, in and out. That kind of radiation, which is very harmful than, say, non-pulse radiations. And this is very important to remember that the fifth generation uses pulsation type of EMF radiation, and previous generation did not use these kind of things. And pulse radiation is more harmful for your health than the non-pulsed EMF radiation. And also there has been documentations that it also increases the risk of cancer, genetic damage, learning ability, memory deficit, as well as other neurological disorders. So the fifth generation has a real problem. There was analysis of another 100 studies published on a frequency range of in a frequency range of the fifth generation, which was like another about a 6 to 100 gigahertz frequency. And they identified 100 studies have been published. And out of 100, 80% was in an animal study where they do some response. And this response is kind of generally was a physiological, neurological response, and so 80% shows a positive response in terms of adverse health effect. They also did a study in vitro where you have used the cell culture in a dishes and then give EMF radiation and then a study. 58% of them shows positive response in terms of DNA damage, toxicity of the cells, more apoptosis, and so on. So fifth generations looks like is a very, very, very much more stronger, and therefore could produce higher level of damage than the previous generations that have already shown quite a bit damage. Another thing that Ben, you should know about electromagnetic radiation per se, whether it is a fifth generation or earlier generation. Fifth generation will cause more acute damage than the previous generation's EMF radiation. That this is very unusual, that it forces the EMF radiations, which are man-made in this case, it forces the what they call ions in your body, ions like calcium ion, potassium ion, sodium ion, which conduct electricity. They forces it to vibrate very severely. Higher the strength, much more vibration of these molecules will happen. And if they vibrate, they can miscommunicate with neurons. Say, for example, they miscommunicate in our body and therefore could produce an adverse effect. This was very interesting for me. I was not aware of before that it can cause that kind of electrical changes within your body. And not only sodium, there are many other molecules which are charged. Any molecule in your body, and there are lots of, heart has electrical signal, and so they can be impaired over longer time. So this is very important. Unique of a EMF radiation, it is not produced by, say, for example, ultraviolet radiation or other type of non-ionizing radiation. This is a unique effect of EMF radiation, that it can vibrate the ion like sodium ion, potassium ion, calcium ion in your body. And these ions, sodium, potassium, and calcium, plays very, very important role for your health. So if they vibrate, they can alter it, they function in a different way than they was normally they function it.
So that communication that occurs with neurons, can there also be a miscommunication with our hormones with that process?
Yes, it could. It could affect many, it could affect many aspects of your health. And therefore, again, we should not be afraid of that because it is there.
Right.
The question is always there, how we can protect it. And one strategy that people in the beginning for commercial interest propose, that there is all kind of, if you go on the internet, they have all kind of a shield for your cell phone. And the trade commissions, US Trade Commission, examine all those shielding, and they found it is worthless. That's one problem.
But like the laptop shields, the cell phone shield and all that?
Yeah, that's not only that, it is no good. But if you do it, then the energy you are getting, it will be reduced. So it will require much more stronger from the base station to pull more energy so that you communicate it. And therefore you will be exposed to more radiation than if you don't have any shield.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So that was very interesting that somebody explained this thing. I was not aware of that. And I never thought of that if you shield it, that means your laptop or cell phone will require much more energy, and where the energy is going to come, frequency, from the base station. And therefore you will be getting much more higher energy level than you were starting before shielding. So shielding has no value in my opinion, and it could be counterproductive. But so the only alternative is left is the how you can protect your tissue, your body from inside, and as I said, that they can penetrate, because, for example, most recent study shows that in an animal model, exposure to high EMF radiations close to 5G reduces the capacity of your pancreas to produce insulin, and therefore you develop hyperglycemia. This is a acute effect, but if it persists long time, one can develop type 2 diabetes. That is what happens. So it is not very good.
So are you saying, Dr. Prasad, that there was a study that showed EMFs have a negative effect on the beta cells of our pancreas,
yes,
which could actually lead to type 2 diabetes?
That's right. And so it is, and also that in a vitro system, like said, that it can impair. Not only it causes structural damage to DNA, and that can cause mutation and then increases the risk of cancer, but also it reduces the capacity of DNA to repair. And why we suggest that there is also a evidence. First, it is directly measured that in an animal model, as well as in a cell culture model, that if you expose to EMF radiations, it generates a lot of free radicals. And the way they measure the free radicals is the lipid peroxidations. That's one thing. They also will measure indirectly the level of antioxidant enzymes like glutathione peroxidase, catalase, and the manganese oxide dismutase. And so these three antioxidant enzymes are reduced if you expose them. So if this antioxidant is reduced, then you increases the oxidative damage to your system. And so these people already have measured it. They have also measured the inflammation, markers of inflammation, like IL-6, tumor necrosis factor. And so, until these things penetrate, you can have these kind of changes in your body and even in the animal model. So those are the evidence showing that EMF radiation increases the level of oxidative stress and chronic inflammation. And Ben, as you know, that these two cellular deficits are involved almost all human chronic diseases.
Yeah.
And it is not just only EMF, it is involved in the ionizing radiations, except it is much more severe than, say, non-ionizing radiation like EMF. And so the question was that how we can reduce that. Next question is
that how we could reduce to how we could protect our tissues and our cells. Before we get to that, I just want to just kind of reiterate what you just mentioned. EMFs are found in the Wi-Fis we have all around us, so Wi-Fi signals, our cell phone.
That's right.
We can't escape it. It's everywhere, especially if you live in a big building. There's routers, there's Wi-Fi, there's everywhere. Those defender shields, or whatever you want to call them, for your laptops and your phones are useless according to your research. In fact, it could actually do more harm than good. Yeah. And what we want to do, since we can't get away from these hits, we want to learn how we can protect our tissues. So how can we protect our tissues?
Yeah, that's the main thing. So some study has been done. As you know, that antioxidant are the one compounds in our body we take from the diet, and some antioxidant made in our body. And they are the one who are primary defender against oxidative stress and inflammation. And so we will focus on that one.
Okay.
And there has been some data already published that in an animal model and in a cell culture model, if you treat them before exposing to EMF radiation, they provide protection in terms of reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammation, and also many of the symptoms that we see in animal model or in a vitro model. So some data is already exists, but it is always on an individual antioxidant. And we feel that individual antioxidant is not sufficient to protect the human. Why? Because our body has a different types of antioxidant, some of which we take from the diet, vitamin A, C, E, and some we made ourselves, like coenzyme Q10, alpha-lipoic acid, and so some of them our body makes it. And so if you use just single antioxidant, it's not going to do the job. In vitro, you can see the effect. In animal model, you can see some effects, but not the optimal effect. And also, antioxidants are distributed in our body differently. Some antioxidants are saturated in the membrane, some are saturated in the mitochondria, some are water soluble, some are lipid soluble. So how do you expect just giving one antioxidant will do the job of reducing oxidative stress and inflammation? There is no way. And so that's why we have always, it is unfortunate that most of the study, even in human, as you know, that people have tried with a single antioxidant. You know the story of beta carotene in a heavy smoker. Mm-hmm. And so it cannot work because our body has multiple.
Right.
And they work synergistically. Not all of them have done the same thing. Another very important aspect is that in order to reduce oxidative stress, your body has to have two things. First, you have to increase the antioxidant enzymes. And you have to also increase the antioxidant compounds that we take from the diet and our body makes it. You have to do both. Now, if you supplement with few vitamins, they can increase the endogenous or body-made, not body-made antioxidant or dietary antioxidant. You can increase by supplementation. But increasing the antioxidant enzyme level is much more complex. It requires activation of a transcriptional factor called NRF2. You may have heard with NRF2. It requires activation. But what happens that normally activation of NRF2 requires free radicals. But then it becomes resistant. So you can't activate them by free radical anymore. Like it happens in Alzheimer, in chronic diseases. NRF2 becomes resistant to normal stimuli. They can't activate. But some antioxidant, not all, some antioxidant will activate the free radical resistance, or we call it ROS, reactive oxygen species resistance NRF2, because they have to be activated. And therefore, once you activate them, then they go to the nucleus and then turn on the genes that produces all these antioxidant enzyme. If you can't activate NRF2, you cannot increase the level of antioxidant enzymes. So in order to do that, you have to have preparation of vitamin or multivitamin, where you have all the component that can increase the level of antioxidant compound that we take from the diet, and some of them our body makes it. But also it can activate reactive oxygen species resistant NRF2. So it can increase the antioxidant enzyme level as well.
So very complex system the human body is. It's such an amazing process. I love the way you explain it.
Yeah.
So the goal is to develop or consume foods higher in antioxidants for sure, but also a recipe, if you will, a NRF2 recipe that helps your body actually turn on this pathway on its own. So what are some of these vitamins and minerals that we could include?
Yeah. So in order to protect against EMF radiations, long term, and it is you don't have to worry about anything else shielding to protect it. The only one way you can do it, you have a good diet, good lifestyle, and also a good supplement. And supplement that I developed was that you showed in your hand is a micro daily EMF. And micro daily EMF has not only the dietary and endogenous antioxidant, but it also has a phytochemicals like resveratrol, curcumin. We have a green tea and ginseng. There is another one there.
Quercetin.
Yeah, and so these phytochemicals are very important because they are also very powerful anti-inflammation and anti-oxidation and anti-free radicals. And the reason that you can say, why not just add one? Because they work by different mechanism. And therefore, we have shown in our research when I was at the University of Colorado Medical School that a mixture of if you do individual antioxidant, it has no effect. But if you put them together, it has a dramatic effect on cell in terms of killing or whatever criteria you are measuring it. So the combination becomes very important. So in a micro daily EMF, we have not only the ingredient which can activate ROS or reactive oxygen species independent or resistant NRF2, but they also increase the level of endogenous antioxidant and dietary antioxidant. Plus, additionally, it has a phytochemicals that we generally eat it, but not as high dose. And so it will be a powerful protection against the EMF radiation of any intensity, whether it's a 5G or 4G or 3G. But especially people are concerned about 5G because it is much more stronger. It has a lot of, for example, the range, you just imagine it. The range of the previous generations, the technology was anywhere between 1,000 to 2.5 gigahertz. So it is very low, 1,000 millihertz to 2,500 millihertz. But 5th generation starts with 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz.
Wow.
You can imagine is magnified strength. And therefore, you can see that if you are very close to, you keep yourself closer, that it could have a more damaging effect than the previous generation frequency. And especially many people do it, So the best strategy would be not only you take the EMF radiation, but EMF, microdaily EMF, but also maintain good lifestyle, because not only it will protect from the EMF radiation, it is also important to improve your overall health.
Yeah.
Because those micronutrients are there also to improve your immune function and even ionizing radiations.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I prepared it, that it could reduce the oxidative stress and inflammation, which are involved in almost everything you see. Environmental pollution, if you are exposed to, smoke.
Right.
Right now in California, we have a lot of fire going on.
Yeah.
And I can smell it from my home.
Oh boy.
But some of these things you can't avoid it, and so the best strategy for maintaining our health is that have a good diet and also the good lifestyle, do some exercise, and have a supplement like microdaily EMF.
Yeah, so I've been taking the microdaily EMF. It has all of the vitamins and coenzymes and antioxidants that you mentioned that you've researched thoroughly, and I'd love for you to kind of send me some of those studies so I could put in the notes of the podcast.
Sure.
So I've been taking 3 capsules 2 to 3 times per day. Let me ask you this question about this product. What if I'm traveling and I know I'm going to be on an airplane, I'm going to go through x-rays and radiation? Yeah. Should I increase my dose of this?
No. I think 3 doses, is in the morning and the evening is enough. And that will protect you, because the biological turnover is, suppose if you take a morning, by evening it will be gone. But if you are traveling 4 or 5 hours to travel, and if you have taken the morning with breakfast, or if you want to take a breakfast on the plane, and take a 3 capsule with you and eat it before taking the breakfast. It is important to take this thing with meal, because there are some fat-soluble vitamin there, and therefore some amount of fat, like meat, some kind of food, is important. That's why we always recommend with meal. And so, no, I think after that you don't have to take extra at all.
Okay.
But if you go, for example, if you go for diagnostic X-ray or any chest X-ray, just going before there, you take 1 or 2 capsules. That should be good enough. But if you have already taken in the morning and you are going in a noontime, then you don't have to.
Perfect. Yeah, I take this in the morning. I don't have breakfast, but I do have coffee with some fats. So I take it with that. So the fats help absorb it. Yeah. Now, it has green tea, but you mentioned taking it at night. There's no caffeine in here?
Yeah, green tea. First, green tea is not very much. To start with, it has a low caffeine. Mm-hmm. And it is such a small amount that you will not have caffeine of any significant amount. Some people have raised this issue. Some people have said that I'm very sensitive to. Well, it is possible, and I will check into this, whether it is a purified one or there are some purified component there. But green tea is very healthy, as for Japanese eat it. And so, and certain amount of caffeine is very important for your health. But just like free radicals, certain amount of free radical is important to drive any biological reaction. And so certain, but some people are very sensitive. They can't sleep it. Then you don't take it. Then go back to micro daily, MTHFR, or
Right.
different types of micro daily, which doesn't have this one. And in that scenario, I recommend that you take micro daily plus the brain boost, which has a curcumin and resveratrol. And no, I think when it is a small amount until you are sensitive to and you have difficulty in sleeping if you take in the evening, then I would say that maybe you can consider shifting it to micro daily MTHFR.
Great advice. Yes. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, we're going to put a link to get this in the notes of the podcast. The website is shop.microdaily.com/ketocamp. For those of you in the Academy watching the live stream, I put the link down below for you. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the bottle here. I just ate, so I'm going to take 3 of them right now because I'm due for my afternoon one. So I'm here taking it right here in front of everybody.
Yeah, I already took it in the morning with my breakfast.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay. So we talked about the dangers of EMFs, what it does to create inflammation at the cellular level. We talked about this fantastic supplement that you formulated, that you put together, which I highly recommend all the keto campers take and use every day. Now, what are some other things we can do? So, for example, Dr. Prasad, when I go to bed at night, I turn off my router. I put my phone on airplane mode. I put it in a different room. I never keep my phone in my pocket without it being on airplane mode. I don't put it to my head. What are some other things we can do to kind of take less hits from EMFs?
Yeah, I mean, again, as long as you are taking it, you don't have to worry about it. But, the way you are doing precaution is good enough. I mean, important thing is the distance, the level of exposure, how long, how much amount, and that's all. And so that acted almost like a physical shielding in a way, because you are maintaining the distance, you are reducing the exposure. And so I think that's enough. I mean, if you can do like that, not many people do it, most of the people carry in their pocket, and so especially teenagers, as you know that, I have a granddaughter, but she takes vitamin, we don't have a children vitamin, but it takes, figure out some kind of vitamin is better than zero. And so I think you don't have to worry about too much if you take already those kind of precaution, but you don't have to. And but it makes you happy, you can, because you are taking already precaution in terms of tissue damage. And so as long as you are doing some of those things, maintaining the longer distance and spending lesser time. But, many in a business, they have to do more time, exposure time, and that's the reason the micro daily EMF come into pictures, and so I think that's all really I can suggest it in terms of, because there is no question there is a long-term potential damage of even previous generation, and of course with 5G we have more, because some unique character of EMF radiation and that was not apparent with previous generations, like pulsation issues. It's very important. And so once you know what kind of damage might be occurring in our body, then it is easy to develop this strategy, like you have developed it. Maintain the distance, spend as much time as is needed, but not excessive. And so the best strategy would be to reduce oxidative stress and inflammation is EMF, and it has also some side benefit. Overall health will be also improved.
Now, what about you had mentioned studies on animals, and what about our dogs and our cats that we have? Are they also affected by the EMFs that are in our house and apartment? Okay.
Of course. Not only that, one study I want to quote, which was respect to ionizing radiation. But radiation sometimes is radiation. When it is absorbed as an energy in your body, it doesn't know where it comes from. And so this was done on a formula that I developed for a diagnostic radiation type. And so it has all the antioxidant component of microdaily, and so this experiment was done on a CT scan. Most of the time you say, oh, CT scan, you don't have to worry about it. One CT scan, a little amount of radiation, yeah. But what this European, it was done in Europe, in a major hospital, and it was published in a radiology journal, which is a Bible for radiologists. It's a very good journal. And so what they did, they gave a CT scan to people without any antioxidant that we provided them, and then took out the blood after CT scan, one CT scan, take out the blood, and in peripheral, they measured the DNA damage. And in the peripheral lymphocytes, when they examined under the microscope, they said a lot of DNA damage. They were not expecting it. Then another group of patients received 1 hour before CT scan and was given this dose, antioxidant combinations. And then same kind of a study was done. Take out the peripheral blood, stain the lymphocytes, and found that there was over 50% reduction in DNA damage. This was one form of DNA damage called double strand DNA breaks. It has a true strand, so both breaks, and that kind of damage. So they can't rejoin it, but it helps. It prevented that damage. So that's very important.
Wow.
That such a small dose, like one CT scan, can do that. And so anytime you have excessive energy, it can be very useful. And like in UV radiations,
right.
They have their skin. People like white population who wants to become like me, and that increases the risk of melanoma.
Right.
But that is absorbed in the skin,
right?
Because they don't have those complex magnetic field.
Okay, we have a couple questions here from two of the Keto Camp Academy members who are watching here on the live stream. So first, I'll start with Rosanna. She's over there in Mount Shasta, California as well. Rosanna says, what do you think of orgonite? Do you know what that is, orgonite?
No.
It's like these, I believe they're these rocks that absorb EMFs that you kind of wear or you put them around your house. Have you done any study on that or no?
But see, the EMF radiation cannot be, like I said, cannot be blocked, and it not absorbed. Like you put near it Wi-Fi or some place. I don't know how many places you can put that rock, but I don't think so. In my opinion, it doesn't make any scientific sense.
Okay.
In terms of absorption, because if it's a small rock, it is not like energy like sunlight or your sunscreen that will absorb the energy. No, I don't think so. Electromagnetic radiation cannot be absorbed like that.
Okay. Next question comes from Kira. Kira is over there in Canada, and she says, are there tools or mechanisms to measure EMF damage to our body pre and post consumption of the microdaily?
Well, I think, yeah, you can, for example, before taking the, before taking the EMF, you can measure in your blood. Generally, if you go to your doctor, then they measure the CRP, C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation. And not many lab measure the oxidative damage marker, but at least you can measure the CRP level. And after a few months consumption, you might see that your CRP level is down. That's one way of figuring out how effective EMF is in terms of reducing the inflammation. But there are 10 different measures of inflammation: IL-6, tumor necrosis factor, but those things are not measured. But you can measure it. You can measure the melanaldehyde, which is a measure of oxidative stress, but nobody measures it until you are doing a research on.
Yeah.
And so you can measure it before and after and then see. Or another symptom, suppose if you have any kind of symptoms, or you feel, for example, if you are hypersensitive to EMF radiation, then you go and take the microdaily EMF, and then you can go inside the area where there is EMF field and see if you feel any difference. I think a fellow, Dr. Court in Oregon, thinks that the people who take it microdaily and then comes in a contact with the EMF radiation field, they don't feel a hypersensitivity at all. And so that's one measure, whether it is effective or not in terms of EMF radiation. But not many people are sensitive to, but some do. Be sensitive, but they feel immediately headache, migraine type headache. And so that will be the one way of doing it.
Yeah, great advice. So you could get your inflammatory markers done before and then measure it a couple months after. You could also see how you feel.
Yeah.
Great. Dr. Prasad, any final words that you want to share as we wrap up this interview?
Well, final word, it is very important that you maintain a good health. And one way of doing it is, as I said, I want to reemphasize, do some exercise, do some meditations, and have a micro daily EMF. And if for some reasons, if you are sensitive to one of the component of the micro daily EMF, 1 in a million people could be, then go back to micro daily MTHFR. It will be also good. And so that's all I suggest.
Awesome, Dr. Prasad. Thank you.
And keep Ben informed how everything is going,
yes,
so that I can hear from Ben what are the effectiveness of this strategy is.
Yes, absolutely. Keep me informed, and I'll share with Dr. Prasad some of the benefits for those of you who are going to take this. Dr. Prasad, I thank you so much for your amazing information. You have been such a pioneer in the space, and I enjoyed our first conversation, and I enjoyed this one too. And I want to thank you for your research and dedication.
And I don't know, Ben, if I have your email or not. I can send you a draft that I have written on electromagnetic radiations and how it can be attenuated by micronutrient. I've not published it, and the reason is because we have in the process of patenting it. We have provisionally patented it, but real patent, we have one year time to do it. And so until that thing is done, I cannot send it for publication. But
yeah, I would love that.
So that you can have read at least the abstract to see what's going on, and you'll be at least you can see some of the documentation with references and everything. It is there.
I'd love that. I'll share with you my email after we end the broadcast here. So everybody who watched with the Keto Camp Academy members, I see Monica saying great information. Helen said this is great. Thank you so much for watching. And Dr. Prasad, thank you so much again for coming back to the show.
Thank you, Ben.